Welcome to a kingdom where everybody's treated like a king. Castle, the crown jewel of Atlantic City.
You should see the glint in Mr. Brodsky's eyes, remembering from a time back when. Well, that ad here for a casino, of course, you play along. That casino in the ad, it's long gone. And it was part of an Atlantic City in its heyday. And for more than 20 years, Atlantic City, it owned a monopoly as the only place really east of the Mississippi that allowed legal casino gambling. The hope was that the money from the casinos boost the programs aiding the state's seniors and disabled population, and that the rise of the city's casino districts, they'd spread into other more impoverished sections of Atlantic City. And while some development has happened thanks to the casinos, in a lot of ways, the gamble has certainly not paid off. Now, walk just a few blocks from the casinos and you see what I'm talking about. Sections filled with crime, drugs, prostitution, rivaling any city in this country when it comes to urban blight. All that was supposed to change over the past couple of years thanks to the new governor who made a bet on Atlantic City. Also had a new casino, a new focus on revamping the city that he considered a linchpin to New Jersey's economic recovery. But tonight, it looks more and more like Atlantic City has crapped out again. For more on this, I want to bring Andrew back. And Andrew, the governor had a very interesting and I think creative press conference to try and put a good spin on a Chapter 11 bankruptcy filing. But this isn't just about the Revel. This is about Atlantic City overall, and it's not a pretty picture for the governor or the state. And a lot of different pressures working against the city, Rich. For all the glitz and glamour that Atlantic City tried to portray, the reality has always been much different. Until last year, just 2 new casinos had been built in the city since 1990, the Taj Mahal and the Borgata. That's a trend the new $2.4 billion Revel Casino was supposed to change. It opened last April to great fanfare and with great support of Governor Christie, who floated the casino more than $250 million in tax breaks and personally lobbied for Garden State residents to gamble there. That change is much needed for the city, whose major crime rates, including murders, rapes, and robberies, are all well higher than the national average. It's got a median income that's less than half, an unemployment rate that's 50% higher, and a poverty rate that's more than double that of the entire state of New Jersey. And thanks to pressures from casinos in Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland, Atlantic City has seen its revenue from casinos drop 36% since 2006. And yesterday, the city's bad news got a little worse. The Revel filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection less than 1 year after its opening, following similar bankruptcies by the Trump casinos, the Tropicana, and others. The casino isn't closing, just reorganizing debt, but the casino is $1.5 billion in debt and took just $8 million from gamblers in January. This after losses of $72 million in the second and third quarters of last year. The filing, a blow to Governor Christie, not only because of his support for the project and because of that big tax break, but also because the Christie administration has already hailed the Revel as a triumph for the city and the governor. It was also the centerpiece of a state takeover of the city's casino district, a move Christie said was necessary because of mismanagement and incompetence by the city's leaders, which may explain why the governor today doubled down on Revel.
This is not a newsflash. We've had challenges in Atlantic City for a decade that nobody's been willing to do anything about. And we're actually trying to do something. I told you, give me 5 years to see if we can fix Atlantic City. We're about 2.5 years into that. So give me another 2.5 years. You can call it a failure at the end of 5 if that's where it turns out, if that's where we wind up being. But I'm not ready to give up yet. And we have other things that we intend to do to be aggressive in Atlantic City. And I am not yet ready to give up on its viability as a convention and visitors mecca on the East Coast.
All right, that's the governor today. Andrew, thank you. Now, for more on the Revel bankruptcy and what this means for Atlantic City, we bring in John Brennan. John's a sports business reporter for the Record newspaper in NorthJersey.com. John, thanks for a few minutes. I appreciate it.
No problem.
Listen, I saw the Christie presser today, and he certainly could put a good spin on it, but he said, among other things, that AC can still come back as a mecca, and he actually tried to sell me that Chapter 11 was a good thing because this proved that they were investing in the casino. I know he didn't have much of a choice here, but are you buying any of that?
Well, there is some truth to the fact that in the investment community, obviously, anybody, including the original owner of Revel, Morgan Stanley, they've lost hundreds of millions of dollars and over $1 billion, really, and there's no good news for them, including with this bankruptcy filing. However, from a jobs perspective in New Jersey, keeping the doors open is pretty important, and it's sort of gotten to with a lot of these casinos where it's so grim that if they can just at least stay open, there's something to salvage there. Obviously, Governor Christie was more optimistic than that statement, though.
And it should be noted the S&P also downgraded, gave it the lowest credit rating in terms of the debt that's held there. But, John, do a macro picture, because when the governor came in, he made, as Andrew said, a big bet on not just the Revel, but Atlantic City as being an engine here for economic growth in that part of the state. How tough a situation is AC in overall right now, and what's holding it back? Is it just more casinos in more places that people can game online? Can you see any scenario where it comes back to where it was?
Well, I think there's a lot of frustration by some casino supporters, because the fact is that New Jersey was aware about 10 years ago that New York and Pennsylvania were going to be adding a lot of casinos and gambling options near the Jersey borders. And so something sort of had to be done to try to take on that challenge, and really nothing changed at all. And sure enough, Pennsylvania and New York have come in and taken so much of that revenue. So this sort of was a time for big, bold ideas. And other than Revel at least getting built, there really hasn't been much of that. So there was some hope that Atlantic City's superior entertainment offerings, for instance, or spas, would be enough to get people to drive an extra hour or two rather than go to their convenient casino nearby. But that's not really the way the market works, as it turns out. People would rather drive 30 minutes to go to one basic casino than drive an hour or two or three just to see an upgraded show. I don't know if there's any way to sort of fix that. So long term, it is looking pretty grim for Atlantic City.
And you got some of the legislature who say, let's bail on AC here, let's build a casino at the Meadowlands, and others who say every time the state gets involved in this, whether it's Xanadu, American Dream, Revel, whatever, it never pays off. Let's just get out of this altogether. Talk about some of the frustrations, in Trenton, and if they're serious about trying to build a casino, you know, closer to the Meadowlands and to the stadium rather than trying to revitalize AC.
Well, yes, Governor Christie and State Senate President Stephen Sweeney from South Jersey, who's a Democrat, they had about 3 years ago came up with this idea that Atlantic City should get 5 years to try to get their act together. And we're past the halfway mark on that now. And a lot of North Jersey supporters of a Meadowlands casino say, what's the point in waiting another 2 years? What's going to change in that time? So there's more somewhat pressure in Trenton to push for a North Jersey casino. But as long as Governor Christie and Senator Sweeney hold their ground, there's absolutely no way that's going to happen in the next 2 years.
Finally, John, you got any sense that you know, the management team that came on a year ago, they couldn't you know, catch a cold, let alone run a casino, that smarter people, better run people could do a better job with this thing, or is that pretty much window dressing?
You would think that there would be a change in management, frankly, even if it isn't sometimes the fault of the original person or people. The fact is that the casino has failed badly. It's not attracting the amount of revenue that they need to pay off their debt service. And I wouldn't be shocked to see some new management brought in, although it's not going to be easy no matter who comes in there to try to save the day.
John Brennan, I appreciate a few minutes. Thanks. All right, Andrew, you know, we didn't even bring up online gaming, which they're trying to do right now, which you would argue would draw even, you know, less of the dollar that's going to even travel, like John said, in some cases hours to go to a casino, and then you got to book a hotel room and everything else. You got any reason for optimism that this area, which was, I mean, for people who have just even if they turn in just to HBO, you know, Boardwalk Empire, remember what it was at one point. You don't have to go that far back to see when it was the equivalent of Vegas East, right? Is there any reason that it could become a fraction of what it once was?
Not unless it can offer something that other states and other areas can't offer. I think that's why the governor is trying to get the state to allow and the feds to allow sports gambling, because that would at least be a different niche that Atlantic City would have that its surrounding competitors wouldn't have. But Atlantic City, it's old, it hasn't really refurbished itself, it's expensive, particularly on weekends at times when most gamblers can go. It's not you know, it's not a lot of fun. You know, when you're pulling away from the games, and I go from time to time, you know, when I'm not playing poker, it's kind of a boring town.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure what it can offer that other places can't.
Ed, New York, obviously, we all heard Governor Cuomo in his State of the State. He made it clear that casinos are going to be part of New York's future, at least see if he has anything to say about it. We're still waiting for the exact locations. Do you have pause now after what you see going on, not just, by the way, in New Jersey and Atlantic City, but in a lot of other places who thought that this was some kind of panacea? State gets into business with this, and they don't see the return that they had hoped.
Look, gambling as economic development, I think, is a bad bet. And Cuomo's betting on that upstate, especially under these conditions where you got economic downturn, online gambling, other things coming up. It's a bad bet. Governor Pataki made the right bet. Basic research institutions to promote nanotechnology in the capital city region. That's booming. That's a high-tech industry for a high-tax state. That's good. Gambling, I think the governor's going down the wrong path here.
Yet, Richard, if anyone's been to some of the areas where the Catskills used to be, for example, and they've been proposing to bring casinos back, they're ghost towns.
The road to hell is paved with good intentions. And I concede everybody's trying to do the right thing, but this makes no sense whatsoever. It's not just bad for the locals. Your data on Atlantic City is very powerful. But it's another corporate giveaway of taxpayer dollars, like the Yankee Stadium deal, like the Barclays Center. It doesn't pay off. The same conservative forces that want to cut spending on human services are willing to write checks for $250 million to a gambling corporation.
It's not conservative forces. You got a governor who's making it a point.
I thought he was the conservative.
Oh, okay. Yeah, well done. I walked right into that one. Yeah.
The point of it is, Democrats and Republicans are equally guilty here. Economic development that is equivalent to writing taxpayer checks for large projects fails. And it's failed in New York. It's going to fail again. And I'm not so sure that you're going to see the referendum, if it gets to that in November, be adopted by the people of the state.
Richard, you mentioned HBO. That's how you started asking the question of Andrew. What they also had on HBO was a notorious series about prostitution that happened to be in Atlantic City. And Andrew's right. The moment you walk out of the casino, there's nothing else there. In the city, there really isn't a tax base. Why would you go there to go to an old casino when you can go to a newer, updated one in Philadelphia, only 45 miles away, or Pennsylvania and the Poconos? And the Poconos, for example, you can do clothes shopping with no sales tax. So for New Yorkers, that's a great thing. No sales tax. There's an indoor, notice I said indoor, beach for your children, and the casino is 2 minutes up the road. How can Atlantic City compete with just that one casino?
Well, let me ask you. We'll go around the table. If the referendum happens in New York State here, how would you vote? Would you vote yes for casinos or no?
Definitely. Looking at Albany, Buffalo, and Syracuse. Definitely, without a doubt.
Andrew?
I'd vote yes, but I want a way to keep that money in state, because the big Vegas-style casinos that Governor Cuomo was talking about would hand a lot of that money over to the multinational corporations that don't have any loyalty to New York. If there's a way to keep right, but most of the profits,
but that's a big but. I mean, people do get hired. Not great wages. I mean, you're talking about dealers, you're talking about all the rest here, but it is something. And my only point is, I agree with the two of you that the ills that come along with this are very real. But when you see nothing but shuttered businesses in so many places, in the upper Hudson Valley and points where this would be, as compared to what? That's my point.
Supply side economic development doesn't work. Demand side would work. The way you do this is to stimulate people by doing things like increasing the minimum wage, having people buy products, and making sure that there is money in circulation,
people
not by
leaving
subsidizing.
These places
Niagara Falls, Canada, Niagara Falls, New York. That's all that needs to be said.
All right, we take a quick break here as Dominic gets the last word. And when we come back, we're going to talk some politics. And if you want to talk about fall from grace, Jesse Jackson Jr. here. The guy was a rising star here. A lot of people thought, with a national future, and he brought down, like so many, by his own devices. We'll talk about that and a lot more in Real Politics right after this.